My name is Bocian, and I am representing RDS Fund, New Promised Land Seed Fund. There is a program for supporting startups at the early stage with the support of NCBR, National Center for Research and Development in Poland, but the program is supported also by EU funds. Hello, Chris. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Jan. Thanks for inviting me.
We for sure will try to discuss what is important for the startups to think about the global market.
This is primarily directed at founders. Also, of course, venture capital funds from around Europe and the US that like to syndicate with the RDS fund portfolio companies. If you're a family office or angel looking to partner on a fund that's based in Central Europe, focused on health, well-being, energy, and industry transformation, and then again, corporate and innovation teams that are looking for interesting companies, particularly in the data space and coming out of the talented region of Central Europe. So those are some of the folks we're hoping are watching today.
We are, as a fund, looking for the most motivated teams who are planning to do the startups. That means the projects with the strong R&D component, but also with the specific focus on the health and the well-being, as you said, but also energy security is very important topics and hot topics, how to secure the not only renewable but safe energy resources, not only for today but for future. We've also looking for the carbon neutrality, and industry transformation and data science is so important also for that. We are looking for the projects with the international commercialization potential. And what we are doing in our fund, that generally we trying to combine the very good scientific competence we having both in Poland and specifically in Łódź with the potential networks we have established both Europe and globally. And for us, there is so important that the startups think about the project from the early beginning, going global. We invest in one particular project, 1.1 million Polish zloty, that 20% of it is a private capital, 80% is the grant. And that's why we are also looking for potential investors in the second fund, which will make the follow-up investment in the already developed projects, and we could validate the business concept, because our most risky investment will cover the most crucial time and period for startups incubation and validation of the business concept. And for sure, the important for us is that we are based in Łódź. In just 100 years, that the small town from 600 inhabitants was grown to 600,000 inhabitants. And that was one of the most industrial areas in Poland in those times. And also that was bringing innovation and the creativity of the people across Europe. What we could say, Łódź is and Warsaw is a similar case like Oakland and San Francisco, because there is like we could say twin cities with the specific situation. And what is also important, that the center of logistics in Poland, as well as the future fast train lines, will be in Łódź. And that is a very interesting place to be and to participate in the transformation and create the innovative projects in Łódź with the support of the all levels, not only authorities, but also the local companies which are looking for cooperation. And further on, I would like give you the floor, Chris, to say more about the project you developed, Global Venture Academy.
That's right. Well, thanks again, Jan. It's great to finally be doing this presentation after years of putting the fund together, all the effort that folks have put into it. Just a little bit of background. So the way that the relationship between the RDS Fund and the Global Venture Academy has worked is we sort of, prior to the application actually of the fund, we talked a lot, several years ago about, why not have in a really early stage fund an international component that could allow the portfolio companies to have more speedy access to markets and feedback and stuff. So we kind of talked about this several years ago, and I'm really happy that the fund came together and is working, has done 5 investments now, is amazing. And we're now doing our first Global Sales Academy together to really try to deliver that unique quality of international access and networks that we hope is something that the startups like and that our syndicate partners like. So the history of the Academy, it really started back in 2013 when we did our first gathering in Mountain View, California, with a bunch of Berkeley people, SoundCloud, Shazam, Adyen were there. So not such a health-oriented crowd at that time, but certainly very B2B-ish and very data-oriented companies. So we've continued to do that every year. And at this point, we have this modular ability to support as a value adds venture fund. So we're happy that we're doing that with RDS Fund.
I think that's what was also important, that our first discussion was coming to the event that was Innovation Poland US Innovation Week in the
That's right.
Bay Area, and that was a
That's
lot
right.
of interesting discussion, let's say, and inspiring idea was coming. And finally, the good things that we are starting operating the things which was developed through our cooperation and a long discussion.
No, it's true. I mean, that was 2014. If you can imagine, that's when we met, and we were doing one of our academies in San Francisco the same week that the Polish, I think, what was it, the top 500? There was some initiative that was going on between Poland and the United States at that time. And we just serendipitously all met, and a bunch of people came to the Academy that day, and here we are, gosh, how many years later. So it's really great. And yeah, this gives just a little bit more background. I won't go into it, people can read it, but just to give them a sense of what venture.com, we're based in the Netherlands, but we've always tried to kind of work cross ecosystem. That's one of the strong things that we try to do. And we're definitely excited about being involved here as well. So from a global point of view, you can see Vuch is there on the far right. And these other red dots are places where we've either been recently. I know that Piotr was in Brussels recently. We're going to be doing an event here in the Netherlands. And then over the summer, we've got some things going on in the US as well. So this is just an example. And we'll be talking a bit more here as we go on tactics, the whens and the what's and so forth momentarily. With this fund, we're doing it very differently. I think the idea being that you can help a founder to talk to people that are relevant to the business, either partners or potential customers. If you can have those relationships and those discussions early, then it can really help clarify for the company their roadmap, what they're going to be developing, how they integrate with other architectures out there. Index Ventures has an interesting view on expansion to international, and they describe it basically as 2 dimensions. One, feet on the ground. Do you need to have people on the ground in another country in order to get customers, to support customers, or can you do it without so-called boots on the ground? And then the other question is, how much of the addressable market is in that foreign market or that international market? In this case, we're really talking about Northwestern Europe and the US, and the higher the market potential or the market size in that region, and the lower the boots on the ground requirement, the more the earlier a company can actually focus on that market as a priority. In this case, we're not really talking about expansion because these are seed stage companies. I mean, our business is typically focused on early to growth, but I think that the seed stage is something that there's a lot of relevance as well. According to Y Combinator, Paul Graham, a startup is a company designed to grow fast, and typically where we see problems is after companies have sort of their regional product market fit. If they haven't done the international, then they go through a bit of a flat line, and they see that box on the right side there to engage those markets where the company plans to be in order to adapt the product, adapt the content roadmap, and the team, actually, the growth team, where are people going to reside? Then on the left-hand side, there's a lot of things companies can do to just ensure that they're capturing the requirements around them, understanding that there are competitors. 20 years ago when I did my startup, we thought it was competitive back then, and here we are 20 years later. But then on the right hand side, where you're really serious and you're saying, okay, we now want to be driving revenue proactively from that geography, and stop depending on sort of random inbounds that are going to come in for the good companies, but not in a very high quality manner.
I always remember regarding that, thinking about the market size. I spoke with my colleague Seppo from Finland, and also there is so many successful startups from Finland and Baltic states. But when we
Right.
starting discussing about the business, Seppo always said to me, we are only 8 million people market. When we planning the business, we make from the early beginning, we need to think about the global markets. And I think those also open my eyes and thinking about the project development. That for sure, the Poland is a big market. There is around 40 million people market. But finally, when we're talking about fast-growing companies, it is important to incorporate from early beginning the potential other markets, or even that potential that in some markets the project could be easier to introduce to the market, that let's say test and validate the MVPs, and let's look for the other channels for the market, and maybe some other growing markets is easier, cheaper, and less complicated to achieve the first sales. And that's are the things I think very support so successful startups from Finland and Baltic states.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you got Estonia with, I think, 1.2 million people, and they have 6 unicorns, and they do it the way that, the quote unquote Israelis do it, in terms of getting out, of the gates really quickly, and engaging the market directly, not via an accelerator, not via some channel partner, but directly into the market to capture those requirements themselves and understand, like I remember in our company when we started, there was a certain point we recognized, we thought at first we were going to be a bolt-on solution to existing marketplaces. Like there was a company called Commerce One, another one called Ariba. We ended up backing off of that and realizing we wanted to connect to the major ERP vendors like Oracle, SAP, and we had to understand their architectures, because the object model underneath the product needed to be able to speak to those applications. So this whole idea of, either getting out into the new markets, both to build those relations. Maybe you get a lucky strike and you find an exact fit, because that for sure it happens. But mainly to ensure that your teams have the right information. And I think that's why I'm so excited about how this fund is designed with a super strong science anchor, with Piotr and the team leaders there, and this mindset around international. So this slide to me is, in a nutshell, it's this concept of iterative development. Any founder understands the importance of iterative development and continuing to get smarter and smarter as you begin penetrating your market. And most of the stuff that we see at the top of that, sort of those loops, those integrating loops, is this process of outbound discovery, and not trying to be perfect before going in and talking to people that you need to. So absolutely. So there's a bunch of things within a global venture academy. There's this idea of go-to-market development and testing. Now, to me, that would be something that would be more helpful to an early stage or a growth stage that's really going international. But certainly, small companies can be capital efficient on how they do things that from the beginning, and product positioning and competitive analysis. I mentioned that before. You just never know, especially if you're a technical team, how you're going to be perceived by business executives, who are the ones that hold the budgets. And so if you can manage to understand product positioning for those different personas, both the CTO or that technology person who probably is more of a peer to the development team in the early stage startup, but also those business executives who, your technical peer at your future customer, those two guys or gals are going to have to get along, and they're going to have to understand each other. And the more that the startup can speak to the business guy and educate that person, and not depend on the technical counterpart to do that job of translating what the value and the risk is of this technology, the better off you're going to be in your sales process. It's just going to be 10 times easier to get across the goal line. There's other types of things. I think, outbound, basically outbound just means using free methods, reaching out to target lists into particular role types. So say, you're reaching into the VP of digital at Pfizer, or, Kaiser Permanente, or whatever the company is. And the benefit of outbound is really you're able to codify what works and what doesn't work. Inbound is dangerous because if you start with inbound, you end up, sucking a lot of your team's time handling and qualifying inbounds and figuring out, do we value this company as a customer or not? And I can remember one of my early experiences here in the Netherlands. I was working with a big software company, and the founder was a guy named Jan Baan, who actually they were competing with Oracle and SAP in the first generation of enterprise software. So the guys, did very well. And he described that, probably 20% of the customers that they had by the time they exited, I think they were a unicorn back then, that their customers, really 20% of them were the ones that really drove the business value and that drove the exit. So, a lot of times we take on new customers, but they can be, not in the bullseye, require custom development. And this is typically a problem, especially with data science companies, because data science is such a consultative type of category of technology. It's very tempting for talented data science teams to sell into an industry that they may not have planned to do because they're in a sales cycle and someone asks them if they can do something, and they say yes. So outbound leading to a solid inbound is a great way to go, and we try to cover stuff like that. Funnel building and lead gen quality, content roadmaps, video sales letters. I think one of the big ahas for me as a guy who's been doing B2B for 20 years or so is I think the remote aspect. 3 years ago, before COVID, I was probably going to the US 6 to 8 times a year, and from the Netherlands here. And I sort of viewed it as a lever. You visit someone or city, it's easy to get meetings. People will take meetings when you're flying in from Warsaw. They'll be, oh, well, this guy's coming in from Europe. Okay, I'll meet with him. But I think that this video sales letter concept is sort of the fundamental thing that people don't realize yet. How we've seen personalized sales in B2C for ages. But the ability to build out very educational, not product feature walkthroughs, and this is what it does, but much more video sales letters that take the time to talk to these executives, understand what they're thinking, understand their concerns, and then write a script for that video that addresses their concerns from the beginning, rather than leaving them hanging and having to do grab the CEO and drag them into a sales call because, the CEO is the best explainer in chief. No, get that stuff into the videos and then slice and dice those videos and use them educationally over several weeks or months. That to me is the trick. And people ask, why does deep technology out of Europe not grow globally? This is the answer to me, is these very well-crafted educational videos that allow international buyers to trust you and to understand what it is you're selling. So that's a big part of sort of this academy, is learning how to do those sorts of things. If you don't feel like you have the commercial product that sells itself yet internationally, you can go through an OEM. You can go through. There was a Berlin company doing IoT, and we ended up getting really lucky. And Cisco, we went out and talked to 25 companies in the IoT space. Cisco was one of them, and they had just opened up their Linux guest system like literally that month when we went in to meet with them. And it just happened that they wanted this industrial application out of Berlin sort of on their router, because the Huawei prices were gobbling up the low end of the market for Cisco, and they needed to make more intelligence packed into their devices so they could justify the price. And so, having an OEM partnership was something which enabled that 30-person startup out of Berlin. Technology partners as well, for companies that are in the data science space, if you can manage to go in and and contribute to a listed company or something, and you can do something in their tech stack that makes them money, and you do it very well, that's another great angle to take, because both of these things, the OEM partnerships, the tech partnerships, they can be a great backdoor exit for your company. That's what we saw last month with a company called Gravity out of Budapest. Again, around 30 people. And it was the tech partnership that ended up getting them the exit. There are other aspects here, growth tech stacks. There's a lot of technologies now.
Yeah, for us it's so important that we have opportunity that our company portfolio could have the access to such, we could say, accelerating activity, not waste the time for the things that could be straightened on, having the proper direction and proper experts, and also the understanding what is needed in the global market. And that is, thank you, Chris, that we create those opportunity for our company portfolio, but hopefully not only for our teams, but also for the Polish companies which are looking for the international markets, that we could create a special ecosystem to support them in creating, and we could say also to decreasing the cost going to the international markets.
Yeah, I of course that's music to my ears. I'm a big believer, and I think that the idea, the benefit of doing this over time, is you begin to see the nuances of how to do it, and every time you do it, if you make mistakes, you learn from that, and you try not to make the same mistake twice. And of course, when you're working with good companies, companies that have a great product, and maybe their international muscles aren't completely formed, or they haven't had as much time to focus on that, that's a great exercise. Great technologies, great teams, but not so solid international engine. That's a pleasure opportunity to work in. Generally, one of the things we think is a really important aspect is this network effect concept, where over time you're building these relationships. Those relationships have relationships, and if you can build those trusted contacts with either the corporate world. I mean, there's a ton of executives on the business side who I know in the US that love to, they understand the talent coming out of Europe, in particular the data science talent coming out of Central Europe, and Poland, I would say, is probably the most well-known of that. So anybody that's working in data inside a US corporate entity is going to, their ears are going to perk up, knowing 2 or 3 of your target segments, industry wise and persona wise. Who are you trying to reach in the niche that you're focused on? So a niche being a segment of the market that's trying to change something about their business. They want to go from state 1 to state 2, and all of them in that segment understand that getting from that state 1 to state 2 is critical, and they don't know how to do it. And your solution is the bridge that's going to get them there. That concept is something which gives you an ability to go out. It could even be a couple of different vertical industries, because financial industry is going through digital transformation in their talent area, just as manufacturing companies are. So HR and talent might be something that they both are trying to fix, get from that first to that second state.
Relation creation is one of the most important things, and to avoid a lot of mistakes, the possibility of using the expertise of global venture universities and sales academies, the things that how to not repeat the, let's say, problems, risk that already is done, and how to avoid the also misunderstanding on the particular market. Because what I sometimes learn that we also need to think when we're going for the new markets and the global markets, what are the difference in the, we could say, culture, what is the difference in the habits of the people, how to talk, what is important to talk about, and all the things which create the trust and creates the relation to do the business afterwards. And those for sure is very important, to not repeat the problems that already is recognized and well defined.
Yeah, and I can remember as a founder, we had 2 advisory boards in our company in the first couple of years. One was more senior people that were getting us into companies or investors, what have you. But the other was a more agile group of people that we used. And I always thought, as because I ran product development, I always thought about how important it was to have those conversations with people that maybe had more experience than we did in a particular industry, and we could just talk with them openly about, hey, this is what we're thinking, this is what we're building, and they could correct us. And like you said, I really felt that was helping me walk. I always felt like we were walking down a dark, like there was no lights. We were walking down a path, and we needed flames and we needed torches to kind of point out, oh gosh, like there's a big hole in the ground over there. Don't step over there, because you're going to spend 2 weeks trying to get yourself out of that thing, and then go over this direction. And so yeah, I think that idea and this resource center, it's coming together. And this is something that we haven't talked a lot about yet, Jan, but the idea of this go to market and AI resource center, and I would even call it a community where we try to bring the alumni, people that have participated. We've had, I think, 250 B2B companies since that first year.
For sure, we will be also happy to see the questions from other startups, what they faced as a problem to enter the international market. And I think that those opportunity to cooperate on that will be the very interesting and challenging time, how to, as you already said, decrease the risk of losing the most crucial resource the startups have. That means time to the market, and that is the clue.
That's right. Yeah, helping them to do more without requiring more. So this would be an example of an asset within that resource center. It's like an 80-minute series of videos. Each is like 10 minutes long, and they cover different topics, like how do you one of the most important things when you're small is not distracting your whole team with international stuff, because it's going to crush the team. So you got to figure out how you kind of, my personality is I like to communicate most of the stuff to the whole team, but you've got to get good at compartmentalizing things and saying, okay, me as the CEO, and maybe I have my head of commercial, or if you don't have that role yet, your head of product development, because that's certainly an area that can benefit from this kind of feedback loop. And so using these small matrix teams, no matter what size you are, this is something that we advise companies that are 500 people and are tuning their international go-to-market. These matrix teams, small teams that can do things without messing up other people, and they can codify and then distribute that across the organization. So it's a similar concept for small companies as well. There's some examples, lots of use cases. Our particular domain focus is really around deep technologies. So, technologies that require lots of R&D or make a big impact on the world somehow. And then also, I'd say the SaaS AI space. So mainly business technologies. Then there's sort of personal breakthroughs, looking more at the individual side of things, leadership wise. A 3-step approach for what's called telescoping, which is that's how you is what it is what it sounds like. You're sitting in your local market and you've got your telescope and you're peering out into that distant market, but you see it up close, and you keep focused on it. You keep focused on it, and you don't take your eyes off of it until you've kind of begin capturing some of the conclusions about assumptions you've made about that market. And we all know that you can't outsmart the market. You need to engage it. You need to listen, and not go in guns blazing, unless you have another person whose role it is to listen while you're blazing away. And then we get into more things like over time, partnerships become important. Thinking about your pre-exit value packing, how it is you're going to build up the valuation of the business so you actually get a decent exit, since you spend so much time on this experience. And even post-exit, when you do get acquired, it doesn't end. You get acquired, you get brought into a new company, and then all of a sudden you've got a slightly new title, you get demoted a bit, and then you take on a responsibility, usually within that acquirer, for a year or two. And so if you don't have your sales and growth mojo by the time you're acquired, unless you're planning on being an R&D center, because that can be, an outcome, but you need to have those growth skills anyway, because when you're acquired, you're going to have to deliver on whatever the acquisition was justified for. If they thought they were going to take your 6 million in revenue a year, acquire you, and then they were going to have their global sales distribution and clientele help bring that up to 60 million, well, you're going to have to be the one leading that charge of that 54 million delta, which is a pretty big responsibility and kind of stressful, as I can attest to. Anyway, so other things, creating the video sales letters. There's lots of things that are included in these videos, which map a little bit back to the prior slide. But these are the types of things that we want to make available. And again, this is all just sort of coming part and parcel of the Academy. And we hope that, Jan, as you said, we hope that we can understand what people want to hear about, so we can make a video about it. Either we'll do it, or we'll grab someone from the RDS network that knows something better than we do, and we'll ask them to help out. So for sure.
Yeah, that will be so important to, as we said, to make the team concentrated on the development and to create the opportunity instead of creating the risk related, because some of the teams we observed just have the difficulties to put the questions generally. And what was also, as you remember, we discussed also with Whitney, that in Poland there is an example that people sitting on the table discussing the final product to be perfectly designed instead of asking the clients, because partly they are afraid what will be the response from the market. But I think all of these things is so important from early beginning to understand the needs of the market and ask proper questions. And that is a great opportunity, and I think that there is something unique that we could offer for our startups.
No, absolutely. Really, this idea of having a capacity within the fund to either open doors or take some assumptions and go out and test those assumptions together with the startup. And then, of course, as you start getting into the more commercial side of the business, the actual team development and the funnel building and the videos, all those sorts of things begin to come into play and are particularly relevant, I think, in this market where we know, valuations aren't going to continue going through the roof because of the market we're in and the money that's being raised, even those huge rounds. I mean, remember, when you raise a 50 million euro round, it's a blessing and a curse, because it's assuming a future valuation and return, and many of the investors have preferences. I mean, I know that we raised 70 million at my company, and it took about 12 years for us to get to the revenue amount where I actually was going to make anything from my equity, because investors were in line ahead of me to get their return. So at any rate, this idea of early stage international adaptation and then more kind of growth stage, both of those have relevant international go-to-market maneuvers, either through coaching, through some joint gatherings, but then also a couple of things we have coming up. Maybe, Jan, you can describe the first couple bullet points on the activities going on, and then I'll do the last 2 points there.
Yeah, that's we from the early beginning understand that with our seed capital investment, we need to think with our teams and our company portfolio about the next rounds of investment. So we are preparing the teams also to be ready to, as you said, acquire the funds, because there is a responsibility afterwards for the team when they receive the new investment. So we're looking for the potential funds also not only in Polish R&D activities, but also directly to the Brussels or our other joint international programs that Poland was jointly support financially, that the potential teams and our company from the portfolio could be supported by this type of the money. And I think so important that Piotr is involved in the different groups of the activities related to health and health in transition. That there is so important to understand that. And also the network like we create, we've exchanged the information, like we could directly check if something is on the market available in the particular countries. Both there is an interesting case between Poland and UK. There is, let's say, when the Brits come out from the EU, that there are some opportunities appears, and also what we already have, that is incredible human resources in Poland in the science, and also the very well equipped laboratories, which was supported through the different EU funding. And that could be used for the startups development. There is something new in Poland generally, but this asset we receive from different types of the funding is, I think, one of the interesting opportunities to invest in Poland in R&D, to go afterwards for the international markets. That is clear. And for sure, the new funds for the present period of EU, which means the next 7 years, there is Invest EU, there is a new financial and VC opportunities that we also exploring, how to bring the further capital for grow and develop the products and establish well on the markets. And I think further on, there is something that you, Chris, is doing. There is this direct connection to the US market. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So the way that, when you work in an area for a while, you start to try to structure it in a certain repeatable way. And one of the tactics that I think is a great tactic, especially right now in the sort of the ongoing COVID time here, is this idea of testing some assumptions in the US market directly. And so we actually, on behalf of a group of companies, we will go to the US occasionally, and we'll visit several cities. We'll meet with people directly from the list of companies that the portfolio likes to meet with, or our individual clients. And so that's something which we're going to do again this year. We're doing it. We're going to be, actually, I'll be heading on a plane in about 3 weeks here to head to, let's see, San Francisco, Washington, DC, Seattle, Los Angeles, maybe another place or two. And the idea there is to go sit down across the table from executives. We did this with Cinerise, that's a Polish company. We met directly with the VP of one of the top 5 retailers there, the head of digital, who ran, I don't know, an 800-person development team and grew them to billions of dollars in revenue. And that face-to-face time, the hour to hour and a half we had directly there led to their first POC request, which came in from that brand. And and that took some months to do, but those initial engagements is what builds the trust. And typically that executive will say, "Oh, I had no idea." I think in the case of that guy, it was, "Oh, we've heard of an Israeli company in this AI space for marketing, but we didn't know there were companies in Europe doing it too." And so that was an eye-opening thing for them. And so that kind of feedback loop is something which is a great way to go. And so any companies in the RDS fund, or any companies generally that would like to be a part of that, are welcome to reach out, and we can tell you more about it. And then, of course, we also want to spend some time, because it's such a unique opportunity to have a fund like this, and in the history that we're in right now in the world, to really double down on the relationships between Poland and the U.S. markets and business, and really make sure that we, we're not cooperating only in the defense department. We got to support each other in lots of other fields as well. And so this hopefully can be a little bit of an architecture for that. We're certainly going to try, and we would love to meet with people both in the Benelux, Northwestern Europe, and the U.S. interested in partnering with us in the future. The other thing coming up besides the U.S. market research trip is is an Grow with AI. It's an event. It's going to happen in Benelux, September 15th. RDS portfolio is welcome to join for free in that session if you like. And then other companies, if they'd like to participate, just reach out to us and let us know. We're going to have 30 C-levels from 5,000 employee corporate and above. So big, juicy logistics companies like DHL and others will be there. And then we'll have 5 to 8 startups, and that's it. So it'll be 3-to-1 ratio in favor of the startups, and they'll present and get to know each other, and then we'll do an after party with another bunch of people that'll come in. So that'll be in Rotterdam. It'll be online and distributed. It's a tactic, again, having really small, really senior events that are super curated, that are short, lots of knowledge sharing. But then that record the videos and distribute them globally to, say, 500 executives around the world. That's a model which we believe is a best practice and is something that every company should be doing to get the word out and cut through the noise in the market. So those are a couple of special activities we have coming. The US market trip, again, in 3 weeks, it'll be a 6-week project companies can jump into, and then the Grow with AI event. People can just participate via RDS fund, or can see if they can get involved in some other way. Yeah, just some of my background. I'm not going to go into this much, but just the summary is a lot of time doing product development in the B2B space. We got great customers: Novartis, Pfizer, GE, Google. They all became customers. I mean, we didn't realize it was going to happen that way. We always felt like we were failing, to be honest, because it just was so hard to start the company. But in the end, I guess we managed to do okay. And then the last 10 years or so has been, both on the hardware side. So XTPL out of Wroclaw, Synerize, I mentioned Gravity out of Hungary recently, and some others in what I call the deep tech area. And then more SaaS AI. I guess Gravity is an example, Synerize too, maybe. But anyway, using ML for SaaS and B2B, these are areas that we considered near and dear to our hearts, and we love helping companies in that space across multiple verticals. So yeah, great. Again, I think it's a great partnership. I consider this fund, us having been there at the beginning, and to now be able to actually realize this idea we had of combining a super strong science capability with a commercial international capability, and putting those two things together is what I'm excited about.
Yeah, that's. I think that is a great opportunity, and finally, that we doing into the and putting into the practice the things that we designed and discussed quite a lot of time ago, but finally we could prove if our concepts work well, and hopefully we will deliver the quality and expertise to our company's portfolio as well as other startups. Because what I think also that one of the important things could be in the growing stage, the clustering of the teams, that they are doing similar things, but they could find the synergy, and the synergy between the different groups, different angles for let's say going to the market using the different channels. The joint effort many times could be the added value which could bring and accelerate the project to the proper level. And just I would like to, for the, let's say, for the end of our discussion, that just for the short summary question. From your experience and expertise, Chris, so what is important that the team, the startup should focus thinking about go global and go global with the cooperation with corporates?
So with corporate relationships, so there's a variety of things that corporates can do. It starts from the feedback and the product shaping, and sort of what's the holistic solution, understanding all of that stuff. And then as you go through the life cycle of the business, you end with an exit. I mean, you could go public. It's, maybe you IPO and you are a self-standing company. But often there also can be an acquisition. And then in between those two sort of goalposts, I guess there's a whole range of things that can happen. And I see the technology partnership as being a more and more critical thing. I saw that with the Gravity team last month, and how that provided such a great return for them. I think it was a 2-year relationship that they had there. But they were acquired by an Israeli NASDAQ-based company or a listed company. And it was all because they'd managed to figure out a problem they could solve in the solution architecture of the partner. The OEM is a little bit similar, I guess, in the case of Cisco. The idea of baking your product into a hardware device, for example. So you're actually integrated with their hardware solution, and then channel partnerships. Of course, channels. You've got to get them moving. After 4 to 6 months, they'll atrophy and sort of die out if you don't get clients together after a few months. So it can be a big time suck and investment. But channel partnerships, of course, are another angle with the corporate relations, especially, I guess, more consultancies and systems integrators. Capgemini, IBM, those types of companies. And what are some other examples of the corporate? You have CVCs, you have investments that corporates can make. That's sort of a philosophical question for the startup of whether they want to invest their time that way. The positive thing being, you get to know another company intimately. They're co-investing. They're supporting you in certain aspects, but then the downside is you can get kind of sucked into that vortex, and it makes it difficult to work with their competitors and really dominate a particular market niche, because you've got one particular company that you're really deep with there. But on the whole, I think corporate investments can be a real positive thing. And so there are these different stages of company and different maneuvers that are available to companies. And I think in the end of the day, for a startup, the main thing is to ensure that you have listened to the corporates in your niche across a variety of geographies, to the extent that you've incorporated their needs into your architecture and your solution, and then that you have at least one client in these different geographies. Because if you don't, it'll be hard to get that little valuation boost and that exit trigger. You're not going to get acquired typically by a company unless you have at least one client in their region. So there are a variety of reasons why the corporate thing is sort of a critical path from a customer and product point of view. But then there are other things that can be done more, I guess, case by case. But that's kind of how I think of the corporate question. But is that what you were thinking, or what was your?
I think that many times what I learn, the people is afraid for the contact with the corporates, but that I see that from the two angles, that many times a lot of people going too early without ready MVPs and not making research what is really needed, because you cooperating with the corporates, you need to also make your additional research what is the real need, because that is not so easy. And that's why also cooperating with the global venture universities interesting and important, that a lot of questions you already answer, and examples even how to enter the corporates, because that not all angles is many times the right one, that there is important to find the proper way based on the experience and expertise. Yeah. And the second thing is the question of readiness. We few times discussed that many times the team is not ready even to go generally to the market. Let's say paperwork, the legal aspect is not clear. That there are a lot of the homework need to be done for the startups itself to be ready to cooperate in the market, and especially cooperate with the corporates. Yeah.
It's incumbent that the startup segments or kind of puts in clusters different types of contacts that they can make. And so, for example, I would definitely recommend people get out really early and go talk even to those guerrilla companies, but they should talk to a friendly. They should be going in and talking to like a Berkeley alumni, or someone where there's a connection, a friendship. You're going to get an hour time slot, not 30 minutes, and it's not going to be a one directional pitch where you run in there and you're stressed out and you're pitching and then you walk out, what just happened? No, it's like you do it with a friendly, and you do as many friendlies as you can in those first few months. And basically the nice thing about that is you don't have to be prepared. You can actually go in and say, I'm not prepared. But I want to tell you, here's my pitch. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's what we don't have. What do you think? And they'll say, oh, this isn't critical. That's important. And what about this? You're going to go through a sourcing process. You're going to hit this compliance team 3 months in, and they're going to ask you these 20 questions. You've got to have your T's and C's already, dotted and crossed for that future discussion. But I think that idea of not worrying about being prepared in those first few meetings, but doing it with the right people, that's the key thing. And then the awesome thing about doing that is you just naturally get tuned up. I mean, it doesn't take, as long as you're listening and you're kind of adapting. Like, Jan, I know that we talked before this call, we were like, how are we going to do this call? And we agreed on a few things we would do. And, most of them we actually did. I'm not sure, we're finishing up here maybe a little bit longer than we planned to, but the ability to adapt and continue, that'll get you super strong when you go out to your cold outreach. And you want to get to the point where you can go out cold to someone that does not know you from Adam, is so busy, and you hit them with a message and it resonates for them, and they just grab it based on the value of what you're describing. So yeah, I think there's a good way of jujitsuing that problem.
Yeah, that's as we learn and we know that crucial things is understanding how to create the relation and the proper friends and proper angles of entering the fund, entering the corporates, entering the market is the crucial things to not losing the time to make the same mistakes like the others was done. Crucial things is how to find the straight way to be the fastest on the market, because the competition and growing population over the world, and especially after COVID, as you, Chris, was said, that the global village is even smaller. There is a lot of things that could be done digitally that was not even possible to think in the past. Let's say 3 years ago, just only the direct meetings with some people was possible. Today, we could do a lot of things more and save the time for the work and not traveling too much. The crucial thing is find the proper network to develop the project. That we hope with our lots entrepreneurial spirit and center of Europe, we could bring both teams and startups from Poland to the global market, and also welcome the entrepreneurs and funders from the global markets to come to Łódź to set up the company operation here and use resources and opportunities which exist in the city.
Yeah, I think that the geographic connection to Łódź reminds me a lot of Oakland. I lived in Oakland for a long time, and I told you it really reminded me of, because Oakland was this huge industrial center. It was like the railhead across the country, and all the manufacturing in that region were going on there. And then all of a sudden, a lot of it went away. And of course, over time, there's a resurgence. And Oakland, I think, has been a great sort of sibling to San Francisco, as Łódź is to Warsaw, with that manufacturing and entertainment industry history, which is a really unique thing. So at any rate, well, I really hope that this video was instructive. It demonstrated our commitments, I think, to being a fund that's both got that science capability, but also that international at the same time, and kind of a openness and really wanting to find the best companies and help them out. And of course, if we can manage to build partnerships with Benelux funds, ecosystem, Northwestern Europe and the US, then that would be great. So we look forward to hearing from people that are like-minded, and thanks for listening to us today.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris, and hope to you see soon, and also the success for your trip in US, and let's say thinking, and for sure that will be very important time now for our company portfolio to set up the special workshop we have agreed for them, and to learn them how to be prepared for the global markets from early beginning. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, and good progress in any project you have.